Today I'm going to talk to you about the champions. So, when I first had the idea of the champions, I wasn't sure exactly the type of person they were. It was really hard for me to kind of know who they would become, right? So, when I first started thinking about it, I knew a couple of parts of them right off the bat. Like, I knew Aura. I didn't know exactly what was going to be super special about her, but I knew the champion of spirit was definitely going to be named Aura, and she was going to be a woman, and she was going to be the healer. So there were certain things that I had along the mindset, right? So then it became a bit of a hard call on who else was going to be a champion. And so it started to play around with there's, are they going to be a boy? Or are they going to be a girl? And then it was like, and if they have a familiar, what's their familiar going to be, right? Is it going to be the same, or are they going to be opposing? So it was a little hard for me to start thinking that way. And originally, actually, Query was going to be a boy named Clay. And I couldn't figure out who the golem was going to be. And I was actually in my mind just calling them Golem. And then I didn't like it. I was like, I don't really want a boy Earth champion. I wanted a woman, someone that would, I know this is kind of silly, but a Mother Nature kind of character, right? And that was why I ended up having a woman, but I couldn't figure out what I was going to call her, and I was like questioning all these things, and I was like, man, it's just so many questions. I just don't know which one I'm going to go with. Which one? And I was like, you know what? I bet you, it'd be really cool. I'll call her Query because it's just a question of what her name's going to be. And I thought that was a little funny. So my Earth champion ended up being a woman named Query, and she, of course, is orphan. So there's quite a bit about Query that comes out, of course, in my third book, Earth Rumbles, which is coming out soon. Really one of those great characters that I love to make because, again, she's a very intellectual person, a very mothering, a nurturing kind of girl, and I loved that about Query. So then it was like, okay, I had her, and then I was like, well, of course, Clay will be her golem, which was a natural progression. And then one thing I loved about their combination is that together they would form that kind of earth, a male female bond of how Earth runs, and I love that. And then it became a bigger question on, okay, so now I have two of the champions. What am I going to do next? And then it made me go, well, what about my water champion? Are they going to be the other woman? I thought hard about that. Like really, really hard about that. And it was one of those things that I finally decided that no, the water champion should be a male. And I don't want to give anything away from book 2, but when they move into Aquos in book 2 and Rain becomes the main character set, it was immediately that I knew that I had to add into him. And to add into him the right way is to have Marine. Rain and Marine became kind of pair in my mind together. It was just the water champion as both. That's one of those moments in which I always knew Marine was going to be a part of it, but I knew she couldn't be there from the start of it. And that's why in book 1, I made sure it was just the initial 6. And I thought that was very important, that each stone was itself. And then as life progresses, it grows. You add more to you, you become bigger, you become part of a team and a partnership, right? And that became something that I was like, that is the ocean, right? The ocean is a partnership. The tides, the rise and the fall, And so that's when I thought about, the moments that this is the way the ocean, in my mind, becomes. Water isn't one male or female. Water is the duality. It is both. It is all. It is encroaching and encompassing. And that's why I knew in my mind that it had to be a shared power between the two. And that's why you have marine and rain, and not just rain. And this is something I loved as well. The fact that the two are so intermixed that their minds are one in many ways, right? And they have so many good moments in the series together that make me really just love them as a team, as a partnership. And I love that it has those moments. Now, because I didn't go for the lady for water, I knew I had to have another one in there. And I wanted it to be the wind. So that was something I had already decided. I was like, okay, now I have my 3 girls. I have my first boy. I knew that I wanted my second male to be Pyre, right? I knew Castor Pyreheart was the way to go. As soon as I started thinking fire, I was thinking, man, I want this giant, this super friendly giant of a man. And, often raised in military, very strong. His mindset is here to help. He is the kindest because he's a big boy. He's never had to, pretend to be anything but himself. He has been Castor Pyreheart his whole life, and he is proud of that. But he's not egotistical about it. He's been beaten a couple times. He knows his worth, and that makes a big difference. So even though he's 16 when he joins in with the champions, he's already seen a lot, and he's more mature than most people of his age range. But he's still super friendly and a fun-loving kind of guy. He wants to help his friends, he wants to have a good time, and he wants to make memories. And yeah, sure enough, he enjoys the crumbs out of a good battle. He wants to get in there. He wants to play his push games and have a little spar. He wants to go out and train with his companions because he loves that kind of movement, that kind of motion, that kind of man on man, man on woman bout. And he should, because that's what's in his blood. Castor Pyreheart is a brute fighter, and he loves it, and he's good at it. And you know what? Just as he travels with the companions, he gets better and better. And when Fire Burns comes out next year, you'll be able to read Castor's story, which I tell you, you're gonna love. He takes forefront in the main character slot. He goes through his own beloved pyre. You get to meet family. You get to meet friends that he hasn't seen for a while. And I tell you, you get to have battles about battles because that's what Castor loves. It's a big thing to him. Let's fight. And then, of course, we come back to our other lady, Jen Ballinsworth. So one of my favorite people ever. She is witty, she's sarcastic, she's a little rude, but she loves her friends, and the people she loves, she will protect to the bitter end, and she wants to make sure that they are as happy as can be, or, at least satisfied. I knew Jen was going to be a woman. I knew I wanted to have her be very small, because a wind character, she's going to be moving fast, she's going to be that person who scouts, who looks out. She's going to be that assassin type character in the end because she has that quick movement and she is all about knowing how it goes. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go with Jen, like her backstory and everything. And then that brought me to Skylar, right? And I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if Skylar and Jen had a relation? Husband and wife, or they could be,
neighbors that knew each other forever. And then the only thing that really made sense was that they were brother and sister. And that brought Jen into the forefront. When I thought of Skylar and Jen, it made the most sense, right? Now, often will you find a brother and sister combo in a party scenario in this kind of setting and stuff, and I kind of liked that. I kind of liked the way siblings, as they grow and as they age together, they have these inside jokes. They have these ways to kind of communicate to each other. I love that family. The Ballinswards were a family that I had thought about and tried to model in many ways after my own. I loved that they were able to connect so well with each other, and they loved each other. And you can tell. It's a big thing for me to have that familial love, because I believe in that type of archetype in life. When a family is strong and bonded and bonding and they love each other, it is very easy for them to encourage and increase each other's benefits and the things that they can learn together. And I think that helped me in the adventure when I'm writing with siblings, because Jen and Skylar were so easy to write together. It was very natural for them in my style to talk to them, to talk with them, and use them to talk with each other. And in many ways, you can see it in some of the books, the way they speak to each other, the way they kind of plan without planning, and the way everybody kind of, understands near the end of book one that these two characters have a very deep connection together. And it's very nice. They don't have to say things to each other to know what the other's gonna do, right? They've got that all under wrap. And I thought that was something that I loved about those two. And then I knew as soon as all of that was planned out that Aura and Skylar were going to be together. It was something that made the most sense when the champion of balance and the champion of spirit come together. You've got the beginning and the end, right? I thought that was something that was so understanding and good. It's a nice wrap up to the circle of my champions. And that's why when it came down to it, it was always going to be something that I thought should be. So then it was to denote them as special and how to denote them as, beyond everybody else. Of course, is what drew me to their hair colors, right? Things that stand out that you notice on somebody when you look at them. And hair color is one of the first things that people notice. And when you look at somebody, the next thing you'll see is their eyes. And when you have somebody whose hair is silver and you see their eyes are violet, right? That's somebody that's going to strike you as regal or important. When you see somebody who's got gold hair and silver eyes, it makes you stop and look. This is somebody who's obviously special. And that was something I was like, okay, well that was why they got what they have. And of course I thought it was a good transition, gold and silver, right? First and second, Aura and Skylar, right? So it just made the most sense to me when I thought about it. And that's why those champions became who they are. And that's how I ended up making the 6 of them. And they were one of the very first things that I made sure to start when I started to look at the lore. From those 6 and 7 with Marine, that's when I branched out. And then from there, I made the journey happen. As soon as you have those things in place, then you can now start to make the journey. And so that's that's how it all started with those champions. And we'll talk soon.